Welcome all. First meeting of the set of discussion accompanied the exhibition Gotong Royong, things which we are doing together. And this is the first meeting, and I'm really pleased that we open it with a very key definition, or not definition, but the key statement. And the title of our talk and discussion tonight is Gotong Royong, the short history of Indonesian collectivism. And our aim, basically, for the Discursive program is to take the exhibition and its knowledge. As you can see in this room already, it's already dense and packed in knowledge production, but we want to go further and develop some subjects which are underlined at the exhibition, or they were discussed on the site. So tonight, Gotong Royong and its meaning, and the next few meetings will be regarding the nationalism, alternative education, exotization. And so please follow the website, CCA website, and the Facebook pages regarding the next meetings. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests who will provide you the guideline through the Gotong Royong. So I would like to start from Marianna Dobkowska, the curator and the researcher and the curator of residency program at the CCA. Krzysztof Łukomski, as well the co-curator of the Gotong Royong exhibition, researcher as well. Irwan, Ahmett and Tita, Salina, the artist who participated in the show, and our guest Reinaart Vanhoe, who is a researcher, academic, and author of recently published book, Also Space, From Hot to Something Else, How Indonesian Art Initiatives Have Revenated Networking. So let me start first. My name is Konrad Schiller, and I'm curator of the Discursive program at the CCA. I would like to open this discussion with a very, in my opinion, very important question mark regarding the Indonesian context for Gotong Royong, to better understand the meaning of this very important for the show situation. So if Irwan and Reinaart, if you could develop a bit of the pre-colonial and post-colonial context of Indonesian Gotong Royong.
Oh yeah, Tita was okay. Okay, maybe I will begin the talk. I have just one remark for starters. That it feels a bit awkward as we are sitting here around this table to speak to the microphones, but this is for the sake of the recording, because this discussion and this meeting is actually a part of Irwan, Ahmett and Tita, Salina's work in this exhibition. The diagram that is here on this wall, there is a very condensed and very dense interpretation and look into the history, both historical and also contemporary contexts of Gotong Royong. And for the sake of the recording and for the sake of translation, we will be using the microphones, although the situation is very intimate. So that's just one little remark. So, but please don't feel intimidated by this fact. I think that we might also create a very intimate atmosphere, although this audio sphere.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna begin this talk. So, although yeah, most of the people here are very familiar faces, and also maybe familiar with Indonesia, and also some Indonesian friends who are coming here. I would like to say thank you for coming. But I think it's important for us to give introductions a bit about our country. So yeah, I'm here to give a short stories about Indonesia. So yeah, there will be no slides, so it's just going to be talking. I hope it's not going to be boring. So yeah, Indonesia is very far away from here. So it's about 10,000 kilometers. So to the east, huh? And yeah, and we have same colors of flags. So our flag is red and white, and here is white and red. So it's already a connections. And what else? So yeah, it's a big country. If you're talking about the size, so we are number 4th most populous country after the U.S. with 260 millions of people. And our capital city is Jakarta with 15 millions of people. That's very crowded. And Indonesia is the biggest archipelago with 17,000 islands and very much diverse with cultural and traditions and customs with, I don't know, like 600 to 700 languages that is disappearing now, sadly. And also an additional info that around, I think more than 6 million Indonesian people who working abroad as migrant workers. Maybe they're also here, some of them. And geographically, Indonesia is in between 2 oceans, Pacific Oceans on the east side and the Hindia Oceans on the west side. And it's in the Southeast Asia region, so together with Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, and Australia and New Zealand in the south. And then we have tropical climates. It's very hot there. It's very opposite to here with the European climates. Really opposite. So we only have two climates, dry and rainy seasons. And now we are entering the rainy seasons. Much of tropical rains is like showerings. So you got to be prepared for your coming to Jogja. And what else? So yeah, also Indonesia, we also have a lot of volcanoes, and it's in the Ring of Fire region. Maybe you're familiar with the Ring of Fires. It's considered like one of the deadliest place on Earth, because we have a series of more than 150 active volcanoes. Yeah, that helped, I think. Yeah, that's Indonesia. And with the natural disasters, like deadly natural disasters like tsunamis, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, typhoons, and so on. And yeah, one of the biggest volcano eruption is Krakatoa. It happens in 1883, and Tambora is much older than Krakatoa. So it affects the climate nowadays. And actually in Indonesia, I think just recently we found that the cave paintings is one of the oldest. I think it's considered the oldest cave paintings. I wrote a little bit stories about the caves on the murals on the left. So yeah, the cave paintings in Maros, Indonesia, in Sulawesi. So it's 40,000 years old. And what else? I think, oh yeah, we have, oh yeah, that's the, I haven't been there, so yeah, I couldn't tell you more about that, but there are a lot of information about cave paintings. And also, there's a sound?
5,000, 40,000 years old at a minimum. They could be even older, but that would make them as old as any other ancient art we found, which is in the past only been in Europe, in France and in Spain. And scientists at first were thinking that maybe art creativity started for early humans in Europe, and this shows that basically our ancestors were drawing all over the world. There's a drawing of an animal, it's called a babirusa, which is essentially a pig deer. It sort of looks like a fat pig with little legs. And even more impressive, because they lasted through time better, are more than a dozen handprints. They're sort of stencils, as if someone spray painted all around the hand. And art is one of the things that sort of separates us from other animals. The pictures are just pretty impressive when you look at them. Once you realize you're looking back 40,000 years in time. I mean, you may go to an art museum and see a painting that's 100 years old. That's nothing compared to this.
Yeah. So yeah, we also have a long history about colonizations. Yeah, since in the 16th centuries. At that time, Indonesia didn't exist. It's just hundreds of small kingdoms and with archipelagos, with all very diverse. And then first Portuguese came, and then later on Dutch came, and then stayed there for quite a while, like 3.5 centuries. And then after that, Japan came for 3.5 years, and then we got independence in 1945. But actually, yeah, the impact of colonization is still happening now, because we still consider still a young country. So like how old? It's like 70 years something of independence. So oh yeah, a few years of British. So they are really like our country. So I think, yeah, that's it for a little bit of introductions of Indonesia. I give the microphone to Konrad.
Thank you very much for that. So I think it's time to move on to Gotong Royong itself. And Reinaart, if you could, as you did the research of this, and part of your book is regarding that matter, if you could develop this matter, and maybe Marianna as well, from your perspective as curator, when you approached the first time this important intellectual and not only a structure.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to be part of this table, to share insights I have, but also insights you have. And I think that's the nicest part of, for me, being related or having friendship with Indonesian artists and citizens in general, is that it's the opportunity to share insights with each other. And there's actually almost no specialist, but everybody has a kind of intelligence to bring on the table. And that's why it's nice to be here. And I like to contribute, and I like also to hear other things, of course. To relate a little bit to what Tita said, for me Indonesia is a kind of world on itself. It's like a representation of the world. In that perspective, that you can also call it dunya, which means the world, a collection of islands. And almost all language routes are passing by through Indonesia. You have Portuguese, you have Spanish, you have Dutch, you have English, but you have also Chinese, Malay, Sanskrit, but also Arab. So you have a lot of, I mean, for me, actually, that would be nice if not English is the main language, but Indonesian is the main language. And I would like, I once tried to propose not to make Indonesian the main language, but to use only one name in the world for a country. So I'm from Belgium, so Belgia is the standard of how we call the country. Or Netherlands is Belanda. And so anywhere in the world we just say Belanda if we talk about the Netherlands. It's maybe a fiction, but it would be nice reality as well. So you know I'm from Belgium, but you don't know I live in Rotterdam, so you know now. And I happened to be lucky to be invited once to go to Indonesia in 2000. That doesn't feel a long time ago, but it's a long time ago. And there I met also Irwan and Tita at that time. Other times, other kind of vibes. But I felt lucky to be there and to experience things. And since then, the friendship is on. Still, I consider myself quite an outsider. And actually last year when I was at JAF, who is also part of the exhibition, Jatiwangi Art Factory, and talking about this book, I suddenly realized that actually you cannot write a book like this if you don't know the language. I mean, you cannot. Because you need to understand a bit of language to understand the powers, the insights, so it's quite difficult. But because I have been there now for 17 years, and the book started, I did about 2012 till 2016 about the book. So because of the long friendship, I was a little bit able to do that, and with a nice help of a good editor. It made it even more possible to write it clearly. So it's quite readable for everybody. That's a long introduction. So I go to Gotong Royong. As a foreigner, we are seduced by words that we don't know. And Gotong Royong sounds nice, I guess, in most languages. It's like it rolls. It's a kind of, it has a poetic power. So Gotong Royong, yeah, cool. And it's about working together, yeah, cool. And it's about not about profit, it's about helping each other, even more cool. And it's like without any condition. It's like helping out each other for different kind of moments and in different kind of situations, and not directly with money. So that's like, yeah, these Indonesians, they know what they talk about and how they would like to work with. But for today, I base my knowledge, because my knowledge is also limited, but actually the knowledge of the word Gotong Royong is also limited within Indonesian culture, because actually nobody knows where it comes from. And for today I limit my knowledge to 2 articles which we probably will share online. It's a text by John R. Bowen from '86 with the title On the Political Construction of the Tradition Gotong Royong in Indonesia, and another text by Grace Sambo, The Democratization of Knowledge and Curiosity Through Gotong Royong Art. So I base my intelligence on these 2 texts. So where does the term Gotong Royong originates from? Is some sources say, it actually only comes from after the Second World War, from 1945, kind of in the rhetorics of Sukarno and Hatta, the president and the vice president. And another, like, oh shit, really, is that Royong itself maybe does not exist as a word, or that's also doubtable if that really exists. So you're only left over with Gotong, maybe with not history or history. So it's also a symbol of that, I think, we in the Western world or in Europe are used to definitions. So Gotong Royong is working together, voluntarily helping each other out. In Indonesian languages, words have a much more flexible, fluid meaning. So actually this exhibition could also have been named Kerjasama, Kerja Bakti, Gotong, Tolong Menolong, Sambatan, Pangolo, Bedurok, Gujuban, Gentosan, Grojoikan, Kerubutan, Genten, Arizan, Corvée or Sikep, Sukarela, and maybe I wrote it wrong, Sukarela, but Sukarela now sounds also nice. So that's an important thing, that words mean and don't mean something, or it's approximately, or in the vicinity of things. The kind of origin of Gotong Royong comes from, let us say, from villagers or people working together or farmers working together. And it has been used, the meaning by Sukarno and Hatta, to kind of oppose the suppressor, the Japanese suppressor, but also the Dutch suppressor. So it's a kind of mobilizing people to fight for the nation. So it, instead of like local community, it's brought to a kind of national level. So it's like adapted and branded, so to speak. So that's an important thing. And at the diagram, you can also see like parts where it originates, like above. Sukarno Hatta suggested Gotong Royong as the compression of Pancasila, the 5 principles of the Indonesian Republic. But then if you go down, then you see that his daughter, on the totally right side, Megawati, Sukarno became also president, and she used the cabinet Gotong Royong as well. So that's a nice example. Later on, after the nationalization of the word or the principle, the next president, and I would say Indonesia is maybe also colonized or something by the USA. It's not colonized, but deeply influenced by the next dictator in the new order area, Suharto. If you look importance of micro actions in the new order under Suharto, and actually this nice sentence, importance of the micro actions, because Suharto brought Gotong Royong back to the micro organizations, but connected to the military activities, connecting it to giving the, or like seducing people, no, like forcing people to apply Gotong Royong. Like, hey, but that's in the natural or the habits of us people. So you should apply Gotong Royong to your neighborhood. And about these two figures, Sukarno and Suharto, in this text I found it very nice words I would like to share, is the horizontal Gotong Royong and the vertical understanding of Gotong Royong. And that's very nice in that way that, as I understood it, that Sukarno wanted to use Gotong Royong to distribute ownership, to distribute how you do things as a nation. He had to bridge nationality with religion and with and communism. So he tried to make a kind of horizontal Gotong Royong to overcome each other's differences, and to understand you need to give up parts of yourself to be one unity. And the vertical Gotong Royong is happening at Suharto, where he implements his intelligence system in local communities by distributing sometimes money to the local head, who maybe keeps the money or gives money to his friends, and forcing the people to work in a Gotong Royong way without paying, because that's how we do things. Or that's a little bit abstracting what is in this text. I don't know if somebody knows something more precise or want to add something on this horizontal or vertical, I don't know. But I thought it's a nice way of looking at Gotong Royong as well. I was happy to read about that.
I think it makes a lot of sense, even if the term itself is Gotong Royong was not that widely. Even if the term of Gotong Royong was not that widely used before the Second World War, I think that view that you propose is very interesting because, in fact, local communities all over Indonesia, since long time ago, I suppose, I don't know for how long, have been organizing themselves in that way, working collaboratively on their fields as clans or as members of the village, deciding in pretty much democratic way how they're gonna proceed with the production of the crops and split them up, and they've been organizing themselves in sort of cooperatives to like process their crops and all that for a very long time. So I suppose that vertical way of organization as communities has been around the archipelago for much longer than the term Gotong Royong itself exists, right?
Yeah, and also the words I named is also proof that Javanese or Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia, is one of the many languages that have been used, and the terms can differ from place to place as well. Yeah. That brings us to that language is a tool. And for me, or language as poetry has a power, and that brings me to a question of today. So where to take the expression Gotong Royong to define a certain Western art practice. So language is also power, and we are sometimes kept by language, but also we can retake language to use in a poetic way, or maybe a poetic way to retake words. And Gotong Royong is a word that we can use as a kind of magnet. I think maybe Sanggar is a word. It's like how artists work with people or citizens. That is a word that is contaminated just like Gotong Royong, and we will go to Sanggar. Sanggar is also somewhere there. It's a contaminated word, but maybe we can take it back. And I don't know for the context of Poland, but I think the word cooperative is a kind of tricky word, but maybe it's time to take it back and to make use of the word instead of like saying like, cooperative, it's something or fashionable in art nowadays, or something old-fashioned from our parents or grandparents, but to take it back instead of like taking it away. This introduction is already too long, but I will try to summarize 7 points that I wrote. What is for me interesting about Gotong Royong and meeting with Indonesian friends. I'll go very quickly to it, and then we go to more practical now today examples of Gotong Royong and more discussion. But for me, Gotong Royong, partly described in the book, is what is at stake, and why I'm very happy that this exhibition is here, and I hope maybe it goes to another place as well, because it not only combines different practices of Indonesia, Poland, and other parts of the world, but it's, in my perspective, we need to find another kind of definition of contemporary art practice. Because part of the title of the book is From Hot to Something Else. It's taken by from a work of Pierre Bismuth, who made graffitis on a building, starting with the word hot and then translating it in other words, and then suddenly you come into a kind of word of spicy. That's the first word, and then there's another picture, piquant. And so like you come to 10 words, and for me it's a symbol of we live in a kind of hot, cool world, and we all know we need to go somewhere else, but we need to redefine it. And for example, with Gotong Royong, we can try to define what that kind of other practice should be like. And what for me are important is the position of the artist. How do we see each other? I think we just have to leave and not be concerned about our own individual practice. That will come naturally because we are artists or we are art programmers or anything. So we do our things. We don't need to be worried about it. We can be confident about this. What is more important is that at least for me, is working or building with others, with other people, with citizens, with other disciplines. Use the intelligence of different people that you are surrounded with, instead of thinking that you as an artist are the genius of things, so that you know, and that you know things for the other ones. Another important thing is for me is the notion of the public. That you as an artist or art organization or working in the art field, that you are also part of the public. So that you are not, maybe there's one picture, Mr. Ahmett. There's one picture I use, a scheme, the left, no, then down, yeah, that one. It's a kind of schedule. The left part is like how we do art is, we do art with our friends, for collectors, for curators, for family, and we talk about, we produce works and we talk about with these works about the citizens, the others, but we exclude ourselves actually from our public. And we do that even by tickets, by kind of network, the architecture, our accessibility, our language that we use, or even our social class. So what I think, we are citizens. So we are part of the public. So if you go to the right side of the drawing, is artists are around citizens or amongst each other. So it's more important to think about meeting places, citizenry, generous places, context-related practices, and not only conceptual practices. And any place is a space. So it's not a gallery, but any place can be a place. So I think that's an important thing of that we are part of the public. Maybe another sketch makes it maybe also clear is that yeah, that one. No, right? Yes. It's a drawing, but you see the artist on the left produces a vase, and then the audience can talk about it or can communicate about it or can be together. But actually the artist, in my perspective or in my thinking, should be part of that circle of looking at the vase, producing the vase. And sometimes the artist does it, but maybe the community does it and gives the artist information, or the artist does it together with the community as a piece of art, but sometimes not as a piece of art, but just as a piece to share experiences. That's what I mean with the public, and what I learned from the experience of Indonesian artists. Then another third point is sometimes we link Gotong Royong with relational aesthetics, but I think the term relational aesthetics, the problematic of that term is that it's still connected to an art context only. So it happens only if art is attached to it. And I think that's the big difference that Gotong Royong in this perspective, or Gotong Royong art, if we say, in the words of Grace Sambo, then it's not specifically art. Art is one of the parts of it. And the context can be much more broader than only art. I think that's an important thing. And connected to that is that we need to work from our own strengths. So work from within our own strengths. We can be critical against things, but we lose energy by being critical. So we need to work from our own strengths with or without the government. Because our practice in Europe is still based on funding by the government, and that's very good and should not go. But we should also, at the same time, not let us down or let our energy going away. So I think we need to use institutes we need to keep these institutes as a tool, not as an established position, but as a tool. Yes, for sure. But at the same time, we need also to work from our own force and claim terms and not let us do by bigger forces, because we cannot beat bigger forces. We can also only show ourselves and our strengths. 5, I leave it for. 5 is like claiming these words. Oh, I didn't know it was a kind of structure, like point after point, like weaving into each other. But it is like claiming these words. I said, like anarchism is a word that is actually a negative meaning for most of the people. But actually, there's anarchism is a very important term, and if we can make that clearer again, then people will understand, oh, anarchism is not breaking things down, it's building together and giving people ownership, and it's with responsibility. Like anarchism doesn't equals responsibilities in these times, but it is equals responsibility, a very good understanding of what it is. And I go to another word. We work in a non-profit area, or a non-profit scene, kind of. But fuck that word, non-profit. But we should not use non-profit, because we put ourselves away. We say, oh, we don't do it for profit. Of course we do it for profit. We profit amongst each other. So I think it's important to say it, we do it for benefit. We are in a for benefit environment. And if we use for benefit, then we can better explain what we are doing, for who. Who do we address, for who are we working. So it's the same with maybe Sangar, the word Sangar, which we will touch upon again. It's a contaminated word, but maybe we can take it back. The same thing connects to that is, I leave number 6 and I go to words of like, you have like artist, the art object, the curator, the public, but these words we also maybe should change into usership, redefining public, leaving the status of objects, maybe even leave the name of the individual artist, and that's impossible of course in the world of art and selling of art, or working with artists, because it's connected with the value. For example, if this place programs artists that nobody heard of, who will come? Or if we use just, oh, we are a group of artists, our name is Gotong Royong, and we operate like that, and it's like 150 artists like that, and it's only Gotong Royong, then it's hard for an institute to apply for money. It's hard for a collector to, but what do I buy? And will it be still valuable? Or it's hard for a gallery to work with, or it's hard for you to, as an artist, to apply for funds. Yeah, I'm artist Gotong Royong, one of the 150. Can I please have money for this project? Then do you know about who from Gotong Royong? So it's a complicated thing, but it's something we have to learn. And ownership is not an issue, as works are derived from a common understanding and a common need. So, but let's try to make ownership not an issue. That's a very hard thing. But sometimes as an exercise we have to learn. Point. Sorry.
I wanted to like very quickly touch upon one thing that you, out of many things that you spoke about, Reinaart, which is the language, and maybe refer a little bit to the exhibition, and why did we choose to use this, I'm not afraid to say exotic word, or two words, this term, because we felt that, well, on one hand, it came from our research in Indonesia, and we came together with Krzysztof very interested, very fascinated with art practices. But I also have a little bit of a problem talking about like art practices. I mean, there is nothing wrong in naming something art practices, but you need to know what kind of art you're actually talking about, because sometimes there is those non-professional, unprofessional, untrained, and not formally educated people who are actually making art, which is non-institutional and which is becoming art as it's being made, and it does not necessarily have to be called art, and not necessarily has to be produced within the art circuits or like art market and like institutional circuits. So there is this practice that we have observed, and we have observed that this practice is producing things that could be called art, and that this practice might stem from the practice which comes from other disciplines than art, which is Gotong Royong. And then we thought exactly about this, about the language, how difficult it is because of how the word collaborative or cooperative is somehow like boring, or like that does not really encompass the complexity of activities that can be taken. Perhaps this strange word Gotong Royong could be for us something like a keyword, like a poetic metaphor, which through being non-understandable in the first moment could evoke this feeling of uncanny, or something that we don't know how to call, but we are longing for it. So just regarding the language and why we decided to call an exhibition in Poland Gotong Royong, which although it also has an ambition to talk about this particular practice, which is so developed in Indonesia, is not only an Indonesian show. So we thought, why don't we use this term, try to explain it, try to dig into the history of this term, but also under the umbrella of this term, which outside of Indonesia would not be clearly understandable, show, but also try to practice those methods throughout our three-month long program, which includes also like activities, discussions, and stuff. Not just this little comment. And I have to say, I'm so sorry we didn't have enough imagination when we were setting up this space, because, for example, I got the best view because I'm just looking at this amazing, diagram, which actually everybody should look at tonight, because. And I'm waiting until maybe we will have a chance to activate it in a performative way by Irwan, Tita, Reinaart, and everybody. But I'm encouraging you to also look this way and try to read this complex diagram, which is forming the basis actually of our discussion, of our meeting tonight.
Make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm.
It's working.
Okay, I'm not from artist, but I'm a observer, and also to use art for my experience, for my happiness. Okay, for your explanation about this, like first created by art. And the artist get information from the public, right? I think, for me, make a simple the Gotong Royong term in the modern way. For example, open source, like open source program. This actually the real example of Gotong Royong. There's no not so difficult to explain to make an example. The example already exists in the not in the art way, but in the software way or technology way. There is open source too. There is people getting contribution together to make a software, and public can use freely. I don't know how to art can use can. Public can enjoy this the art by produced by collaboration among artists. I don't know. I don't know the example from the.
Yeah, I think I could have mentioned it, but it's good that you do complement the talk, because I think there's one clearly and nice example which we can learn from and understand better, and that's one practice of a group from Jakarta, which named this a live patch, and I think it's a very nice example of a group of people. I think there are about 10 people, not all artists, but that comes from that idea of open source, or that kind of open source world. Some of them are related to the makers world, as they call it, or the open source world, and some are from a bicycle community, and one is a bookkeeper, and one is an amateur photographer, and they all work together, and it doesn't matter what happens. If they have knowledge or they get knowledge, then they can do projects, and sometimes they just give the floor in a museum to a girl, and they're happy, and the family is happy. But meanwhile, they produce their works, and they work in the open source world, and they produce and share, and the issue of it's mine or something is like that. It's natural in open source. It's specific in a specific open source world, no? Because Android is also a kind of open source world, so that's a tricky thing. But let's talk about that. But about the more interesting part of the open source. You are totally right, and it's good that you address it. And if you want to check more, you can search for Live Patch. They have their website also in English and in Indonesian. But it's a very, very, very good example. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I just recently saw one pictures that I found in Berlin a few days ago. Because this picture, it's like really make me shocked. This is the shirt Dendels. It's not really clear. So actually this man, it's like the person who created a Java Postweg, which means Jalan Raya Pos. So like the longest road for transfer the communication and also to prepare the attack of the British. So the Dutch like really dramatically change Java within this project. And this is the painting of Raden Saleh. So the painting, it was made in 1838. And exactly in the period when the cultivation system happened in Java. So the cultivation system, it was like the forced labor to people change the land from the communal ownership into the commodity plantation. So in the back of this painting, I saw like very little group of people. See? I thought they are doing a Gotong Royong, but no, they're forced. So
This is not Gotong Royong, it's Rhodium.
that's Rhodium. Yeah, it's like it's in one country it never happened before. Like the changing happened only in 10 years, but in Java it even happened only 3 years. They are built like the roads, and the numbers of people because of this forced labor is dramatically changed the landscape of Java. So, but then recently I also opened the website on the Indonesian news that Gotong Royong for me not always talking about something positive. That also like Indonesian person who works in the government, they do the corruption in Gotong Royong way. It's like super. So like the biggest ever corruption in the Indonesian history is they're doing together, because the number is like 3 triliun rupiah. Berapa ya? 3. It's half of the. Yeah, maybe it's the, you can calculate it later on, but which mean this for me when come out with the Gotong Royong, it's so poetic because maybe this is not only used for the good purpose, but it's like philosophically Indonesian have this attitude, suddenly set up they set mind into the working together, not always create the good things, but could be the bad things.
And the mafias, like the cartel, the military, and the government working together.
That's why the corruption, it's very difficult to rid off from Indonesia, because they're doing in the very good way. They're very solid, and then they use open source. They create their own system, so maybe they're even more artistic than artists. So, by the way, I maybe my mind is like randomly talking about these diagrams, and since Marianna asking me and Tita to start doing some preparation for this, makes me really struggle, because like this word could be already like how you tell something you eat, like it's only into daily life, and hardly we write one by one, so perhaps could be reflect some of interest. Of course, it's not represent all of this idea about Gotong Royong, but at least there is some interesting point about the possibility of working together. So the first start, we use this kind of ancient art, which is in Maros, in Sulawesi. I've never been there, but I'm strongly want to see the first Biennale in the human history. Because the painting is not only one, so they like spread all across the mountain, and they use a lot of kind of a specific condition to create this painting. But also one paintings to the other paintings, they collaborate beyond the edge of time. So like for instance, one first step of hand, and 3,000 years later, someone make another paintings on the top of it. So for me, the working together also beyond of time and space. That's why maybe it's influenced us as an artist. We couldn't make, our life is so short, but maybe if we something makes really useful for the society, I think maybe someday someone will continue it. And the most important part, like you said, there is no name of this artist. So it's a human made this, right? So, and we're jumping to the period of the colonialization, because like in the biography of Gotong Royong, actually the system of the colonialism changed, and the feudalism, the relation between human and the land dramatically, and social, politic, of course ecology. So for instance, like in Java right now, we couldn't find the big tree like this anymore. If you know about Jatiwangi means from the jati, thick wood. But if you were walking in Jatiwangi, you couldn't find this tree anymore. So actually after the cultivation system got stopped, because it created severe famine. So people hungry because lack of food, because they changed the system into the sugar. They couldn't eat. Then sugar sent like even more higher price than gold at that time. So, and what I really like about this, the tribal anarchism, because they know they no point to fight with the colonial. They're too powerful, so they have weapons, they control everything. So they start to help the self-organized to being useless by the system, by the capitalists. So they declare the 9 of principles, being the Saminism movement. For me, this movement is very interesting because they not use a religion or any kind of the political ideology. They just use this obedience to show they resistance to the power. So for instance, one of the, we can read later on, but one for example, the point number 2, do not attend school, and they're stupid, they couldn't read. So because they're stupid, the Dutch, they cannot use it. And this kind of, and surprisingly, these tribes still exist until now, and they're still doing some resistance to Indonesian government. So, and using this kind of attitude, but this kind of people also, they don't have any kind of strong ideology. So they're practicing the Gotong Royong, but more into the philosophically, more to the philosophically attitude. So, and back to this period of the time when Indonesia got independence, it's strongly confused because what is Indonesia and what kind of terminology to give the definition of Indonesia. So then the founding father of Indonesia later on create 5 principles as Indonesian. They write 5 principles. Actually, if these 5 principles combine into one principle, so it will come out Gotong Royong. So which means Gotong Royong, it's like really kind of the backbone of the imagined community in Indonesia. And during the independence period, so some artists start aware about this position, so they start to do working together. And they set up the first organization. The name of organization is Persagi. Persatuan Gambar Indonesia. It's almost like association. But within this collectives, they try to refine what is the Indonesian art looks like. And it's changed dramatically from this. Tita, can you show me the slide of Moy Indi? There is a very famous style of Indonesian painting before. So yeah, it's the Moy Indi painting. So mostly talking about the beautiful Balinese with the big breast and also tan skin. So, and also another beautiful volcanoes. Now next to it, yeah. So this is the landscape in West Java, so very green. But then because of this Persagi movement, they change. You can see later on, you see next to it, yeah, the figure of person carrying a weapon for a guerrilla war during the Second World War. And also next to it, oh no, up, yeah. And the face from the sexy Balinese into the people who do the rebellions to the Dutch. So it like really brings something new to the art scene. And what makes me really interested, because Reinaart also mentioned about Sanggar, one of the methodology for artists to spread the knowledge is not through art institution, because it was not art institution at the time. So artists create their own space or studio to open for public to learning art together. So, and later on, this term, well known as Sanggar. And Sanggar actually from Kawi language, it's ancient Javanese language, which means a small room using for worship. So it's like sacred, it was a sacred place at the time. But later on, people using it for a transfer of knowledge, but also non-monetary transaction and like kind of alternative education, just not talking about art, but learn about life and many kind of things for people to find themselves. But for me, even until now, Sanggar still very sacred. That some community will help you to find yourself. That's why like in Jatiwangi, Ismail, for instance, one of artists who also part of this, he found himself as an artist, and Gori as well. So he's like a local villager, and he found himself as a designer, as an artist. So Sanggar is strongly part of the important elements to support Indonesian art since the beginning, but also in today's situation. Um, but I have to say, I mean, talking about the Indonesia.
No, I thought Sanggar goes together with the word cari sendiri. Maybe you can, and if you...
Yeah, cari sendiri. So in this Sanggar situation, it's a very, very organic. So Reinaart told about Indonesian words, like sentence, which means cari sendiri, find by yourself. So actually, just create a platform, a facility, so the artists will come and find themselves. Some, of course, it's like quite risky because they're gonna be loose or they realize that they are not artists, but also become like artisan or like craftsmanship. But mostly,
Yeah, I like to add a little bit things about cari sendiri. So cari sendiri, literally means like find by yourself. So actually, it means that the senior artist who runs the Sanggar, so he encouraged the junior to find their own way, style of paintings or drawings or whatever art forms. Yeah, that's.
and if we said, what is the methodology they're using in Sanggar? It's one word, nongkrong. It's very hard to explain nongkrong to a European, I think, because it's slightly, maybe you can help me, Mas, to explain nongkrong. Marianna, yeah.
Nongkrong is like, yes, sitting together, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, talking, discussing everything, and like creating some ideas, hanging out, yes, but it can take whole night or whole evening to just spend time together and perhaps discuss some important things, but also some very like small problems and small things, discuss the situation in neighborhood, the situation in the country, then the situation in families, like everything all together. So I would say like, yeah, maybe just like drink coffee and smoke cigarettes and spend time together.
And I think for Ruang Rupa, the art organization I describe, it has been like for 10 years their method of making program. As we are used to, we sit together if we have an organization and then make a program, a plan for 1 or 2 years, and like, we're going to do this and this. But actually for them, the program arises from the nongkronging because topics come back, and then you talk about football online or about something that funny that you saw on the street, or that somebody fell asleep in the train and has been robbed, ha 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 ha. But then suddenly topics arise, and then they think, that's something which we should focus upon, or what we do. So it's also can also be a method. And a little thing is that you said the artist, the older artist, and that's a little problem, but it's a sign of the structure that it's mostly Sanggar is mostly men who do it, and nongkrong is mostly men who do it. So I'm searching for another kind of maybe how women do it, or how a mixed group of do it. But I haven't touched upon that or searched for that. But that's often Sanggar, and that's why we talked about Sanggar Dua, like a new way of Sanggar, to define a new kind of Sanggar in that perspective.
Arisan is perhaps more open for women participation. Arisan.
It's just about paying money.
Yeah, so I think in some, like, maybe not in art, but let's say like in the small of the activities, so like really involve different kind layers of society. Some activities who really involve like all the family members, or like some activity only for women, like when you have marriage. So in the marriage ceremony in the village, women from all of the village will come and help you to cook. But not only about cooking, they're talking, they also have like sharing experience together. And wedding is a big thing in Indonesian part of the archipelagos. So they use, like for instance, my mother will dedicate for today just only to help the other family members if they got married. Just do kind of like simple things. And also Tita's mother's the same. So, and meanwhile we spend our time residency, so I feel bad.
Irwan, I think you hide something about nongkrong. Nongkrong not only that term. There's also nongkrong just go to toilet, right? Nongkrong in toilet. Nongkrong is sitting not because Indonesia smoothing. Yeah, because Indonesia toilet is not like European and sitting, but smoothing. This is also nongkrong. It's my knowledge, because we talk about nongkrong. Also, my associate in my thing is about people smoothing in toilet.
Yeah, it's
Correct?
also possible. if you see like some documentaries from the canal, it's around 1930s, and this documentary about Jakarta Street and Bandung Street. So in that documentary, you can see many Indonesian doing like this. So actually, this is the style of nongkrong, and the same like you make a shit, something like that. So.
Okay, so actually nongkrong means squatting, like sitting, squatting. Okay, but I think it's really, like I think there is something to this squatting actually, because that's why like also in the exhibition you got this one room which also has like a wooden floor all over, which in comparison to other like concrete floors emanates warmth, and it was our way to invite people to sit, because we felt that when people sit on the floor, something is happening. If they are sitting on the floor or if they are squatting on the floor, well, it's this situation where maybe the relations are easier to be made,
Less
maybe less formal. So yeah, I'm very happy to find out that nongkrong actually meant squatting, because we felt that squatting is important for Gotong Royong.
So, for instance, when we back to Indonesia, we have even designed our house a little bit in the backyard just for nongkrong. So it's kind of very open space, people can come and see. But why I'm doing this? Because, for instance, Indonesian art, it's really based on nurturing. So which means the senior artists help young artists to be established. So in my early career as an artist, I got a lot of help by senior to put my position like in the better position to get opportunity to show my work. And in the same time, after I feel much more better as an artist, I also do the same things to the young artists. So it's like, that's also the characteristic of Sanghars. So it's always kind of the energy to support and to help and to be put one person in the map, it's like also important. Yeah.
And nongkrong is not just something funny. It's also can also be deadly, so to speak. I don't know if you know. I think it's Woody Guthrie with a guitar. This machine can kill. Is it Woody Guthrie? I forgot. On his guitar or on one of these, on his guitar stand, it's written, "This machine can kill," like the guitar. But also nongkrong can kill. It's also a dangerous machine. You can explain the 7-Eleven story. So it's not.
Yeah,
it's
I'm really
dangerous.
like that you mentioned about this, because like our president right now always promote about kerja, but I always reply, I don't want. So which means people always being blamed because they do too much nongkrong. But maybe today's world is always demanding on the productivities, but nongkrong is considering not productive activities. So I'm started thinking like in the city of Jakarta with the new, in one day, there's one new 1,000 motorcycle sold. So can you imagine how the big of the city, so with the lack of the transport and infrastructures, the city easily become very chaotic. And then people, and half of population is under 30 years old, so it's so young. You can see the iron energy, it's really big. So, and the young people, they use a lot of internet, they like to nongkrong a lot, they do to hang out, chit chat outside. So, and one happened like, let's say, to the 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven is the one of the biggest chains grocery in Jakarta, which is open in a very strategic location. Convenience stores. But later on, they bankrupt. One of the reason because the nongkrong. So the young people, they can occupy that space and spend their time by sitting, drinking only one Coca-Colas for 5 hours, for instance. So, but they could destroy the capitalism, something like that. Who also destroyed the warung, or like the small kiosk before. So, and even like in Taipei, maybe you can tell a little bit, Tita, and migrant workers.
Yeah, in Taiwan, there is around 250,000 of Indonesian migrant workers working in the domestic sectors and factory sectors, and also fishermen. And well, normally especially the people who works in the domestic sector, so they don't really have formal holidays. So if they get a very good boss, so they can ask them whether they can spend the time on during the weekends, like Saturday or Sundays. Yeah. So so this is happens in the Taipei main stations, is the central stations in Taipei. So the government, the city government, trying to make this like gentrify the space. So they build the very exclusive bread shops or like Starbucks, and then who come there is them, the migrant workers, because like Sunday and Saturday is the only time they have a free time. So they come there and they occupy the place.
Thousands of people.
Yeah, it's like 1,000. It's like huge plaza. So they just stay there, nongkrong. They spend hours, and because it's very valuable time for them, so they come there very early in the morning, like 9 to 10, and then they spend like the whole day, the whole afternoon, and then they come back to their homes in around 7 to 8 o'clock in the evening. So yeah, later on, of course, the city, they're not happy, the authority, they're not happy. So there is this one day they're trying to get rid of them because the reason is they trash, they
put the trash everywhere.
Yeah, they put the trash everywhere. So it makes the beautiful main station dirty. So. But then, yeah, later on, they make a movement because they're trying to prove that it's not true, because they are also civilized, they know how to behave in the public space, and finally the authority accept the situations. And the last Idul Fitri, the last Lebaran, the big Muslim day after the fasting months, so they held the praying, the Salat Eid in the main stations. So, yeah.
But also later on, this become like the new experience for Taiwanese to learn other countries. So like many young Taiwanese, they learn Bahasa Indonesian, or they're sharing their knowledge, and also to create like different kind of sharing technique, like the entrepreneurship or the craft, or many kind of situation. So, but the most important part is just like to reduce the gentrification of this area. So that's the power of nongkrong. I think like really in the beginning I only found it in Jakarta, but later on like even like in Victoria Park also happened in Hong Kong. Nongkrong in Hong Kong. And in Singapore also they occupy one plaza in Lucky Plaza. Not only Indonesia, but Southeast Asia migrant workers like just block and make it full. And
yeah, also now if you have by any chance visiting Taipei, there are many activities, especially on Sundays on the main stations, because they also realize that there is this big opportunity to do some other activities. So you can find there's like a mobile library, people selling stuff, clothes, food, Indonesian food especially, and offering the free Indonesian language course. And
You can get massage for
yeah,
free.
yeah, the traditional Indonesian massage, so everything. So they turn into the nongkrong situation into business, social interaction. So, yeah.
But can you, because I'm wondering as you elaborate the nongkrong situation, but it starts as a political resistance, as I understand, that the migrants, they want to have a meeting points, or it was kind of way of a celebration?
No, wait. I think that that like this term, like political resistance, or like sit-in protest that we know exists, is exactly the wrong vocabulary to apply to this sort of situation, because it's more like it's more subtle. And I also wanted Irwan to finish up the story about the 7-Eleven, because I felt we didn't hear the point of it, which was, if you like, if you can say what actually what happened when people, they did not plan to make a sit-in protest, but they just made spontaneous nongkrong. And
Actually, they're not like really doing the protest. The power of nongkrong itself is the gesture to the unproductive capitalist system, right? So they just avoid to working and to studying and just do nongkrong. And at the same time, it's very effective to even destroy the capitalism in Jakarta, for instance.
And also in 7-Eleven, there is this AC, air conditioned. So it's very convenient because Jakarta is very hot. So of course, they try to find a free space with the Wi-Fi connections.
And like for instance, I can give one example. Like because the numbers of the young people now is very big. So one artist, they only survive by only selling T-shirt. Because if you sell T-shirt for 1,000 pieces, you just enough. You have a lot of money. So they just make an online Rofi, also one of my friend doing this. He's doing online on Instagram only. And then to make the transaction, sometimes they send it to post, but if very often, they use 7-Eleven as a meeting point. So they come to 7-Eleven, bring their stuff, do the transaction, shake hand, that's it. So many people come, just use that 7-Eleven as the meeting point because easy for parking, and like Tita said, with the air conditioner, but it's deadliest for the capitalists. Yeah, that's a Mr. Bankrupt. So
just recently, this June
this
yeah.
year.
So it's a dangerous thing as well. But I think your comment on do they protest is, for an European context, or at least in my context, quite a very important and relevant thing, because we tend to like make ourselves angry, make an action, and oppose the power. And damn, sometimes Indonesians are much more smarter. Like, why worry about something? It's not yours. It's not your business. It's their business, and you can't change about it. So we just use it. And so that's actually more effective, because I don't lose energy. I'm not like anxious, but I just use it. And then, yeah, if it go bankrupt or not, I don't think about it. We just use the platform. It's there. So I do it. And one other, or it relates maybe to make another example of Rupert. If you talk about institutional critique, we have a whole theory about it, but actually Rupert says like what we do is institutional critique in action. So we don't talk about it, but we like are doing things, and it changes the institutes from within, or it influences it. But we are not like opposed, or like don't try to do something conceptual, or like influence the institute by a program. But it's much more like this example of this ruining 7-Eleven without knowing, actually. Yeah, but it's an important part for me, why I like to compare my own practice or my own thinking with, or what I was like fortunate with coming to know them and other people, to understand like, oh, okay, that's how I'm raised, in doing things and how I can learn, how we can learn in doing things other ways. Because I lost a lot of energy to be against something.
If I may just comment that. Just how I understand this discussion about Nongkrong, that I find very interesting, is that to make it clear that that action of Nongkrong starts organically as part of Indonesian culture that comes from a very long time ago, that people just do that, not in any particular purpose, just to be together, right? And just doing that on mass scale in the changing world, in public spaces that have been taken over by the economy. They just proceed doing what they've been doing for the last 2,000, 3,000 years on a massive scale, because the cities are expanding, there's more people around, and the country is growing as well. So instead of having 20 villagers sitting at the main square of their village, you have 500,000 people sitting at the main square in a big city. So they just continue doing the same thing, and that way opposing the capitalist system without even being ideological at all. They're just like doing what they do, what they've been doing, celebrating being together, and not caring about how capitalism is trying to take over those public spaces.
Yeah, but I will be around this political matter in a sense, because we introduce the very vast and very broad perspective on a completely new for the Western world, in a sense, like America, West Europe or Central Europe, and like Gotong Royong, Nongkrong, and it's all, for me, in my perspective, on the last couple of years since 2008 and economic crisis, and Occupy Wall Street starts, and then occupies the City of London, etc., etc. Then activist groups like Białowieża protest and recent protests in Poland. They, in some point, this is a kind of vicious circle of repetition of the ways how we can be opposed to something, how we can confront with power. So I will ask that. Can be the Gotong Royong and Nongkrong can be adapted in a political way, can be a political tool to oppose oppressive politics, oppressive power. Because what we, in some point, want to achieve is to, the second question will be, can be Gotong Royong or Nongkrong, can be global? That's my question. Can be political, can be global.
I would like to respond from the European side. Maybe you respond from the Indonesian side. But I think one of the key elements is, as an activist, as an artist, as a professional, not to exclude yourself from other platforms. Because it's a collective intelligence of an urgency that more people than only yourself are affected with. So that's one point, and I can give an example where it in the past happened, and that's the squatter movement in Holland in the 80s, I would say, I think. A lot of platforms, that institutes that now exist arose from there, like the Melkweg platform and Paradiso, which is the main platform for music now, arose from there. But it was a common need, so it was not one specialist, it was a group of people. There was a shortage of house and a speculation with real estate. And they tackled that, and a lot of people in Amsterdam understood why they did this and supported. And there was no like alternative movement of squatters and the village and the citizens, but they were kind of together. And then by one activity, the kroning, the installation of the new queen, some hardcore members of the squatting movement thought like, we're going to do protest. we're gonna like go into the force of the installation of the new queen. So they did it fiercely, and what happened that they lost the goodwill of the citizens. So the squatter became a kind of like enemy, an alternative, a side thing. They did put themselves in the corner. You can discuss whether it's needed or not. There are for and against things with it, but it's an example where it already happened and where you suddenly put yourself maybe unneeded in a corner. I wasn't there, so I don't know precisely, but there's a nice video online. The city was ours, I think. De stad was van ons, which is nice to see how that works, and for sure in this context of Nongkrong and Gotong Royong. We go back to Southeast Asia.
I just want to play two videos. Two videos is also short, but this is like the first experience that the founding father, they tried to bring Gotong Royong to the world. So exactly in the middle of the heat of Cold War in 1955. So after the Bandung conference, like this is a strongly, and we can see until today, is work or not? It's also a good question. So also the speech from Sukarno is like really reference to the idea of Gotong Royong. So it's really clear, like he tried to promote this idea of Gotong Royong that they found after the independence to the world. So that's why he being coup. and also in terms of the, I just want to show like a micro videos. It's like another, maybe Mas dulu, Mas silakan.
I want to a little bit comment about your question, but can we adapt Gotong Royong nongkrong in Europe? I think nongkrong or action from nongkrong if a communication way to discuss the problem not exist. If the communication is exist, I think no need to take nongkrong action. For example, Indonesia also term musyawarah. So if any problem, we can talk together like Sukarno said before. We are together to bring the to solve the problem together, Gotong Royong. But the action of nongkrong only appear if the communication with the government or something we want to opposite if not establish the communication way.
Which means if you can send your thing or your feeling or your idea in the good way, so that automatically will create this situation.
Yes. It's my comment.
Yeah, but for me was clear in the Bandung conference as Vijay Prashad in his book Darker Nation, he wrote a very controversial thesis that the Bandung conference was the beginning of the colorful curtain, so the Iron Curtain divide West and East, and the Bandung conference created the third world, first world and the second world. And so in some point this idea introduced the Gotong Royong in global changed the global sphere and political influences, but that's on the side that the reception of the Bandung conference nowadays changed the perspective on the post-colonial condition of the global world. So introduction of the colorful curtain plus division between first and third world, when all the problems starts from there.
What else? Mbak Yona?
I guess that we came to the point where we can, as we discussed already, but maybe it's a good starting point to make some sum ups and conclusions, even in the general way, of the perspective on Gotong Royong nowadays, and maybe how, Marianna, that will be a question to you, how the Gotong Royong can affect the Polish sphere of public discourse and public relation. Come on.
Well, I was actually really hoping that that this final connection between the historical and the story of Gotong Royong and the contemporary application, even in Poland, could be actually made by Irwan, because what I found really extremely fascinating, or like this moment of wow, was when we went together to the Białowieża forest, and Irwan and Tita were guests there for a couple of days first, and then again. And when I heard from them, who are the true practitioners of Gotong Royong, they came and they said, "Oh my God, but they are actually practicing Gotong Royong there." So I think so. I mean, for me, it was this this moment of I don't know, some sort of revelation that like no matter how you name some practices, those things are are actually existing in various distant corners of the world. So it doesn't really matter if we call it Gotong Royong or if we call it poem, but it is important to look at the way how they are formed, how they can be applied, and the ways in which they also can turn into something that we don't want them to turn. And so, like, looking very carefully, trying to apply some of those methods, but also being aware that as every revolutionary movement, they can actually disintegrate, or like this. Will you finish? What they can do? They can collapse.
But I would also like to adjust that if we face the fact Indonesia is not that special, I mean, we can talk about how special they are, but actually they are very normal. That means they are like us, without any exception. So that means also Nongkrong or Gotong Royong exist here. And I wanted, when you talked about open source, I suddenly also thought, like, if I can talk about it, then it already exists. And what maybe in our own practice we can focus upon is maybe work less hard to be seen, to be visible as an artist or as an organizer or something, but also put more effort in looking and seeing or finding. And I'm sure the Gotong Royong exists everywhere, anywhere, but we maybe don't look well enough. We are too established in our way of looking and doing things, and maybe I think we need to force ourselves a little bit to look better and work harder in seeing than in being seen.
I will be the one representing the art education field, and that's why I'm looking at you, Reinaart, and also the other people who are here and who have been lecturing and also working with the students. We're at the art gallery, and we quite often emphasize that this particular exhibition is different. It doesn't show necessarily the art results, the objects, the artworks. The question is how those practices we're discussing under the name Gotong Royong, they're not only in Indonesia, how they affect or how could they refer to the changes in the art education? What could we tell the art students who are quite much used that if they come to the gallery, maybe one day in 20 years, they will be hanging there on the wall? What could they possibly learn from what we are currently talking about? That would be the question that is a very open one. It's great. I'll do the same.
Again, it's already happening. The teaching is happening. The best answer is not a right answer, but is what I often say to my students. You don't need to go to art school to be an artist, because what I like on, for example, places as Jakarta, Istanbul, and other like ambiguous places or ambiguous where things are more overlapping, where the scene is maybe smaller, where you come in contact with other professions, you learn much more for your practice. You learn much more awareness of what the world is or how your practice is interconnected with other things. So that's one answer. Another answer is terms, using the terms. But it's individual. That's why I was hesitating. It's like individual activities and not structural activities. But if you talk about individual activities, it's like using the word, using words like non-profit for benefit, then you can explain things clearly. In my case, I do also class, so I don't have time to teach these kind of things in a structural way. So I just do in my spare time, I just give classes about these kind of things. But I see also my colleagues doing it slowly, more and more. The hardest thing, at least in Holland, in my perspective, and in Belgium, is influencing the directors or the apparat, the authorities, yes. Right? And I'm exercising. Sometimes I say I'm in another commission work and I'm at school. Sometimes I say I'm practicing my art practice, being paid in school or in the commission. There I'm in my studio, I'm saying, because I'm trying how to do. But of course there's many people working with it, and what you said, the occupying movements. In Istanbul, for example, they work together, and in Holland it also made things happen, and in the States it also made things happen. There it happens, or like the 16 Beaver Group is maybe a good example without ever having been there. But I think it's working with the authorities and not against the authorities where we are in. I don't know if that's an answer.
It's a kind of answer. Do you think that institutions such as art schools and institutions that represent art or show art, such as the one we're at, because we referring to the diagram, non-institutionalized, we often, non-hierarchical, spontaneity, self-organized, common goal, communal, peer pressure, importance of micro-actions, always do things together. Are they ready? Or are they more and more influenced by such movements that are, going down there?
No and yes, and I think the word effort comes in. I like to use the effort, or like being visible or trying to see is also a word of effort. Like an art practice requires effort. If you want to be in the gallery, it takes effort to arrive there, so it's work. So why not see that effort in trying to put that on the agenda? Or like if you do an exercise with students, I put them in a very little neighborhood in Rotterdam, and it's hard work. They don't want to be there. It's a stupid little area. I don't want to do social art. Why are we here? Why do I have to come here in the morning with this kind of losers kind of thing? And some, oh yeah, it's really nice, but never come. So it's hard work, it's like a fight, but that's the effort. And the fight is not like, should not like take away energy, but give you energy to find words. Again, it's from an own experience that I can talk.
And maybe employing the more non-linear understanding of time, such as the one in Indonesia, maybe.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, one thing I did with Rupert organized the exhibition of Sonsbeek, a big exhibition in Arnhem, and they installed the Roeroehuis, an informal place, and that was quite a tricky thing, but they asked me and Sanne Oorthuizen to run that place, an informal place, and one of the first things I did was to split Roeroehuis from the name Sonsbeek, because it was impossible to work, because Sonsbeek was a kind of hierarchical name, and people came with an expectation, and you could not have talks. So one instrument would be, if you have a formal institute, to organize an informal method to really be able to work. Another thing that I said in organizing a triennale, or trying to organize a triennale, I said as an example, we need to give the curator tools to make the triennale as he or she really wants it. And if that means that advertising for the international artwork needs to be done after the triennale, then we really need to support that idea. Because what do you do with a triennale and a big international campaign with this kind of words? That's impossible. So you need to build instruments to make it happen like it should happen. And one thing is to cut Rudehuis from Sonsbeek as a visual kind of thing, and one thing is like installing instruments. And maybe getting pain or like having fights but a fight is just a fight in non-linear or in perspective of world, it's okay.
Are there any?
Just one short video, I think, from the closing. Is it okay?
Sorry?
Just one videos for the closing. Because for me, it's always have question, for instance, why many Europeans come to Indonesia, or why also we invited, like right now in Europe, it's a lot of Indonesian artists for some reason. But perhaps get more like a nice story from this. Yeah. For people who've been to Indonesia, I think it's gonna be fascinating. So maybe you're just lovely with this exotic dance, but actually this dance, it was the first collaboration between Walter Spies and Wayan Limbak. So they do collaboration like to Walter Spies. So this guy is Germany Russian who comes to Indonesia during the 1920s. So together they are nongkrong. He tried to hide his identity as a gay, but later on finally he passed away because the bombing during the Second World War, when he tried to go back to Netherlands after the independence, to Germany. So within this collaboration, Bali is much more beautiful because after the war, you know, some Balinese, they have also spirit came or fight until they died. So during the independence war, many Balinese died because they couldn't survive for the war. So within this collaboration, they find the possibility to create economies to help Bali. I mean, in the good and the bad way, but at least this collaboration is like going together until now. So in Kassel, I met one new spiritual Germanese who really pissed off me because he kind of finds some spiritual idea being dance, as in the Kecak dance. When I spoke to him, who create this dance? It's Germany. And then I'm so feel sorry to say this to him, but this actually I'm really expect for this collaboration. So maybe make the word confused and make like the new fantasy about this possibility by art and culture. So that's.
So in some point, by the art and through the art, we can exoticize the others, and we build the trap for ourselves when we try to change the way the things are set up now. If there is any other comments? Yep.
No, I cannot leave without making that comment.
Make it strong.
No, it's just a comment that I think would work good for the ending, because it refers to the beginning of our talk about using the term Gotong Royong as the title of the exhibition.
Even if it's such an exotic term, not very clearly defined, maybe a little bit made up, and all of that, like a shiny toy in a way. I think it's a really good, it was a really great idea to use it as that kind of umbrella term, as you said in the beginning, to present what you are presenting within this space in a way that so far, or like in the last few hundred years, the global ideas of art and activism and politics have been defined by Western terms, by Western languages. And this exhibition, showing mainly works of artists or collectives of groups from the so-called Global South or the East, both combined together, and in relation to the Western world as well. Using that term, Gotong Royong, for that exhibition is maybe a way to flip the proportions over and let the Western world look at what we are facing globally through the tools or the ideas or the methods coming from the global South. And that way we also come all the way down to the source of what art is, and I'm very glad that Tita put that on the diagram, the cave art, right? That in the beginning it was not an institution, it was like you were, I suppose those people were not artists with certificates and diplomas, right? It was a collective initiative of people creating that art as open source for their community for specific reasons that like the entire community would benefit from. So this is a really interesting way to use that word in that context, also for how this institution is being used as some kind of a hub to reach out beyond the institution and practice art in a broader social context, and using the institution only as, not as an exhibition space, but as a hub for cultivating those methods and spreading them out. So I'm very impressed with the exhibition, I must say. And with the work of people such as Tita and Irwan. And one last very short remark. I was also very happy when I learned about what Tita and Irwan found for themselves in Białowieża. Because they came back from the first visit being super excited that first of all, those people, what they are doing there is Gotong Royong. They work, the method of how the camp works is very close to them, as they used similar methods working back home with communities in Indonesia. But also they found that what Białowieża camp is trying to do relates to a very important issue that a lot of communities in Indonesia face as well, which is deforestation. So in such case, in such context, or looking at it from that perspective, what those guys are doing in Białowieża and what other people may be doing in Sumatran jungle is a common cause. So Gotong Royong can be seen as a method of working together in a global sense on like the issue, like global issues that that are important to all of us, not only locally, but because it's a broader problem or a broader challenge or whatever. Thank you.
So if you would like to send the first colony to the Mars, better to send some Indonesian.
I disagree.
So, thank you very much for tonight and for the talk. Thank you, our guests, and thank you, public, to join us. And See you on 8th of November when we will discuss the globalization of nationalism. The
global rise of nationalisms, which we call like global nationalisms, international nationalisms that we observe are growing as we want to look into like the whole week preceding 11th of November, which is our Independence Day holiday in Poland, which is celebrated in a very controversial ways out on the streets of Warsaw and other cities. We will try on that week in the discursive program. We will look into those issues, how some communities are being formed around what issues and what we can eventually do about it, because the community building is not always something very bright, positive, happy. Sometimes it's related to xenophobia, racism, nationalism, and such evil forces.
So all you are welcome on the 8th to join us on the discussion. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening.